Bible study. So glad that you're with us this morning. I know I'm a few minutes late. I hope that you will forgive me for that. Sometimes life and technology gets in the way. But today we are in Mark chapter 14, verses 53 through 65. And we are not only now finally in the final days of Mark, but we are also in the final week of our study of our journey with Jesus, 40 days through Lent. And we're also in Holy Week, which means that this coming Sunday is Easter Sunday. And I am very much looking forward to celebrating Easter with you. I was talking to somebody else yesterday, and last Easter, it's almost hard to remember what last Easter was like. This Easter, I know it's maybe still a little different than most Easters, but it also is a lot different than last Easter. And I want to invite you, if you're in South Florida, we're going to be doing an in-person Easter gathering. Christ Table is. It's going to be in Carlin Park in the Sea Oats Pavilion. It is a wonderful location. Would love for you to be there with us at 11 a.m. on Easter Sunday morning. And in fact, you don't have to be in Jupiter or in South Florida to join us. You can actually fly here from anywhere and be with us on Easter Sunday morning. I tell you, South Florida is a wonderful place to be this time of year, and we would love to invite you to be there. If you've got kids, show up a little early. 10:30, we're going to be doing an Easter egg hunt, and everybody can show up at 10:45 when we start serving brunch, and would love for you to join us, because Christ Table, it's all about food, right? So if we're meeting together for worship, then we're also going to be meeting together for food. Looking forward to having you alongside and with us for that. But if you are not able to be here in South Florida on Sunday with us, you can always join us online. We will, same time, same place, 9:45 a.m. Eastern, be live on the internet for our worship. Maggie Granlund is going to be here with us in person in South Florida, live at the in-person gathering, but she'll also be right here with me at 9:45 a.m. Eastern for our Easter worship. And we also are going to have a special musical guest, but I'm just not ready to tell you yet who is going to be in addition to Maggie. So I have to keep some things a mystery, right? The other thing, too, before we get into the Bible study this morning, you may be tired of hearing this, but I am so unbelievably excited about this Whole 50 Bible study. You can get to be a part of it by going to ChristTable.today. Anybody who donates to ChristTable.today, I will send you one of these. If you're not able to make a donation, let me know and I'll get one to you anyway. 50 passages from the Bible that have been spiritually transformative to me over the years. Some of these I've taught on over the years. Others of these, this will be the first time that I've ever taught on anywhere. And so it's going to be very interesting. As I was looking through this, this is just it's a great resource. Each and every day, it's got all the information on what the study is. We've got 3 or 4 questions each and every day to help you do some self-reflection, a little bit of information, some background on the passage, and obviously it will be the source of our Bible studies each and every day here online. So get this, I'm actually headed to the post office a couple of times this week to get more out to people who want them. So feel free to be a part of that. Would love to have you be a part of that, and also just love to have you be a part of what God's doing with Christ Table. And you can sign up for our email list right there at ChristTable.today, and you'll be the first person to know everything that's going on with Sally and I, and with the things that God is calling us to. But let's go ahead and get into the morning. Mark chapter 14. Yesterday in our reading, Jesus was betrayed with a kiss, arrested, hauled off, the naked guy in the scene, which we have determined is the author of the book of Mark, performing a cameo, continues on with the story now of what happened after that middle of the night betrayal. So they take Jesus right after that betrayal and that kiss to the high priest's home where the leading priests, the elders, and the teachers of the religious law had gathered. This is the Sanhedrin. You may have heard the Sanhedrin listed in multiple places in Scripture, usually alongside the Pharisees or the Sadducees. It would have included these groups, the Sanhedrin. 72 members of the Sanhedrin. So it was quite a group that was gathered there at the high priest's home in the middle of the night for this trial. 54. Meanwhile, Peter followed him at a distance and went right into the high priest's courtyard. Seems as though that would have been a regular thing, a normal thing during trials. Perhaps like today, people outside of a courtroom waiting to hear what the results of that trial are, waiting to see what's going on, hear the stories in the middle of the night, would have drawn a lot of attention. In fact, in later years, they enacted a law among the Jews that said you could not do these trials in the middle of the night. Why? Well, because usually justice was not served in these trials that happened in the middle of the night so quickly, and so they enacted the law. But that wasn't in place, unfortunately, for Jesus. There were other laws, though, in place at this time that should have protected Jesus from what's about to happen in this trial, and that is a lack of justice. They were, for instance, not supposed to be meeting during festivals or during holy days like Passover. Well, they are meeting during a very holy time, and we're not supposed to be having these types of trials during this time. So justice was not served in that way, and the law was broken. They also were supposed to have a cooling off period before rendering a verdict of guilty or capital punishment. Now, they could not render a verdict of capital punishment. They could only recommend to Rome that Rome, in fact, perform the death penalty. But there was supposed to be a cooling off period between the actual evidence presented at the trial and then the verdict. That didn't happen either. And so justice was railroaded in multiple ways here for Jesus because there was such a desire to see this end. So we see Peter here on the outskirts of what's going on, living in the margins. And it's interesting. Well, we know that the book of Mark essentially is Peter's memoir, in that Peter is the primary source for Mark. And so Peter takes a leading role here in the book of Mark. It's interesting to me, though, that Peter isn't all in, but he's also not all out at this point in Jesus' journey and in the story. And I don't know what to do with that. I'm actually really interested in what you do with that. Peter doesn't want to get close enough to be associated with Jesus. In fact, he even denies that he's associated with Jesus. But he didn't run, and he's not in hiding. So he's in this middle space where he is not fully protected, but he's also, I don't know what to make of that. Maybe Peter didn't want to get more involved because he thought, well, if both Jesus and I are incarcerated, who's going to lead the disciples? Who's going to lead the ministry? Who's going to get Jesus out? I don't know what's going through Peter's mind, but something is going through Peter's mind, and I'm interested in what your thoughts are. Feel free to put them in the comments. And maybe you'll have more insight here than I do. But Peter sits there with the guards, warming himself by the fire, while inside the leading priests and the entire council trying to find evidence against Jesus so that they could put him to death. They already knew what they wanted to do. This is why there is no justice that's going to be served here. They already had an idea of their mind as to where truth was and what the outcome of this should be. No evidence that might be presented to the contrary to that is going to change their mind. No law that might prevent them from coming to that outcome is going to stand in their way. They will find a way. We see this all the time, even yet today, when people have made up their mind as to what they believe is truth, or what they believe is right, or what they believe should happen, and they essentially stop at nothing to make that outcome a reality. I see that so many times in relationships and in marriages. I see that so many times in families. I see that in churches, sadly, in religious institutions still yet today. Leadership structures and congregations who believe that they know what the right thing is or the right path is, and will reject even if 99%, even if 100% of the information coming their way is in opposition to what they want to do or what they believe is true. Even the Bible itself, it will all be rejected because the heart or the soul says, this is what I want. It's a very dangerous place to be when we find ourselves in the same seat as the Sanhedrin, saying, we're going to reject even God himself were he to speak, and he does through Jesus. We're going to reject all information that does not agree with what we believe God wants, or more rightly, what we want. The betrayal continues to play itself out. They couldn't find any evidence, though. That's Jesus, right? But it didn't stop him from trying. And they were going to keep trying until they found something that was, no matter how weak the argument, enough for them to get what they want. Because it didn't matter that it was right. They just want what they wanted. And they were going to get it. However it happened. So many false witnesses speak against Jesus, but the false witnesses contradict each other. And in these situations, so often that happens, the false witnesses and the people who are saying things make no sense. It's blatantly untrue, absolute contradictions, but it doesn't matter, right? People ignore those things. Finally, though, some men stood up and they gave this false testimony. We heard him say, I will destroy this temple made with human hands, and in 3 days I'll build another made without human hands. But even they didn't get their story straight. They're mixing together several things that Jesus said here. Jesus did talk regularly, it would seem, especially with his closer disciples, about the fact that the death, the burial, the resurrection would happen. 3 days, the physical temple that he was in, his body would be destroyed, would be torn apart, but that it would be rebuilt. He'd be raised from the dead. Jesus also talked several times about the fact that the nation of Israel was headed for a crisis, and that crisis was an invasion, that they were going to essentially lose their autonomy again and be dispersed like it happened in the past in the Babylonian captivity and in other times, that history was going to repeat itself, and that the religious center of worship, the temple there on Mount Moriah, the great beautiful temple, was going to be destroyed whenever that happened. So they mix together all of these things, and that really sends them over the edge, because the temple, boy, I wish I had time to go into all of this, but let me just give you the Cliff Notes version. The temple, their place of worship, wasn't just a place where they worshiped God. It was really that they worshiped the temple. It wasn't, they didn't just go there to worship, but they went there as worshipers of the temple. The temple wasn't just a place where they worshiped God. The temple was their God that they worshiped. They essentially had put the temple in the place of God. They loved it. Their hearts and souls were bought into it. It was the central feature of their faith. And in essence, it had removed God from the throne as the central feature of their faith. Especially the religious leaders. Not everybody in Judaism in those days that was the case. Maybe not even a majority. But it would seem as though a majority of the religious leaders. Why is that? Well, the temple gave them power. The temple gave them place. The temple also gave them control, and it gave them, as we saw with the money changers, it gave them a whole lot of income. We still do it today. When we speak of church, we think of a place, of a building usually. It's not what the word church means in the Bible. The word church doesn't mean a building ever. It means a group of people, any place, who are called out, who are different. So when the Bible uses the word church, it means a group of people. When we use the word church, it means a facility. For many today, the facility itself is the thing that is worshipped. And so whenever it comes up that Jesus is saying that their God, the temple, is going to be destroyed, this is over the top for them. This seals their resolve to destroy Jesus, that he must be stopped at all costs. And so at this point, there will be no more opportunity for Jesus to get out of what's coming. It is now inevitable. Even though they didn't get their story straight, it didn't matter. They already believed what they wanted to believe. So the high priest, and I've jumped a few verses here. I do want you to read the whole reading. It's an easy reading, but I'm going too far, again, too long. The high priest asked him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" And Jesus says, "I am." So the high priest tears his clothing to show his horror. Usually tearing the clothing was a sign of grief or sadness, but here he does it for show. So in these moments, it's so much about show, about trying to get people to see and agree with something that isn't true. And so it has to become about the show. And so the high priest is putting on a show to try to get everybody on board with what he wants to do, even though it is a railroading of justice. Why do we need any other witnesses? He says, "You have all heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict?" And guilty, they all cried. He deserves to die. I want to pause here for just a moment and say, over the years, this passage and the ones that we're about to read through have been utilized in order to justify a lot of anti-Semitism, have been utilized to create a great deal of hate against the Jewish people. And while, I think it's fair to say that the people in Mark 14 and 15 and 16 have to own their actions, I don't think it's fair. It's certainly not fair, and it's not godly to portray as though every Jewish person has to carry on themselves the responsibility for the crucifixion of Jesus. It's not right, and it's not Christ-like. And I think for a lot of people, a lot of Christians, there needs to be some forgiveness and maybe even some public statements, that we don't hold the Jewish people responsible for what happened to Jesus. As we said, yesterday, we all have betrayed Jesus. The Bible clearly says, all we like sheep, have gone astray. We're all in the problematic situation of having been a part of the crucifixion of Jesus through our own lives and through our own actions. And so whenever we come to this Holy Week, I think it's important for us to self-reflect, to ensure that what we are doing this week isn't pointing the fingers at other people, but is taking a strong, hard look at ourselves. You know, through this story over the last few days, and as we go through the next few, if a lot of these individuals, the Sanhedrin, the Pharisees, the high priests, had truly stepped back and done self-reflection, maybe the events would have turned out differently. And maybe the events in your and I's life would turn out differently as well if we didn't so often fall into the trap of already having decided where truth is and where the path is that we want to take, and then rejecting everything that says that's not a good idea and holding on tightly to all of the false information that says, no, yeah, go ahead and do that, Kevin. You know, the beauty of Holy Week is that we get to walk through the death, the burial, and the resurrection. The beauty of Holy Week is that we get to walk through Good Friday and into Sunday. It's an opportunity for us to put things to death, to bury them. Things in ourselves, things in our lives, things in our journey that are problematic. This week, we have the privilege of getting to put them in the ground 6 feet under on Good Friday, knowing that on Sunday morning, something new is going to be resurrected. That's the power of the celebration of Easter each and every year. It doesn't have to be Holy Week for us to do that. It's available each and every day. But moments like this, the sacredness, Holy Week, give us an opportunity to hit pause, to reflect on where we are and where we want to be, and to actually, unlike the Sanhedrin, do something about it. So it's my prayer and my hope for you this week, is that this won't just be a week filled with ritual, that this will be a week that's filled with reflection and the courage to take the risks to bury the things that need buried so that they might be resurrected again. ChristTable.today, feel free. What? No, that's not the right button there, is it? ChristTable.today, feel free to head over there. Sign up for the email list. Would love to have you be a part of what God is doing here with us. But until tomorrow, whenever we are back with Mark once again on Holy Week, happy